Hey there everyone, it's Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're reading lots of books. And I hope you've had a great Christmas and a happy new year. Along with all those New Year's resolutions that keep getting put forth, I myself have got a list as well, which will probably in a month's time be completely thrown out the window. You know, the usual things, getting healthy and trying to actually meet my quota for reading the amount of books I want to read this year, which has been a problem in the past, but I'll get to later on. So I thought I'd do a bit of a cap off, a very late response as to what I consider to be the best books that I've read of 2023. Now, in the past, I've done the top 10 books, but this year was, 2023 was something of a mixed bag. I read plenty of books, but about half of them I didn't even record videos for because I just didn't think they were worthy of my time to talk about. Plus, there were plenty of other videos out there on the internet that talked about that sort of thing, so I decided to forego them. So I have a very select few to choose from. So I'm going to do my top 5 with a couple of honorable mentions. So let's get into it. The honorable mentions are Darkness Visible by William Styron, a very, very short memoir of sorts regarding his afflictions with depression, a very, very severe depression that hit him pretty hard. And his writing about this particular affliction, although it wasn't the first time it was talked about or written about, it was the one that actually broke through to the public, the one that actually got people talking about it and realizing the dangers of it. And I read it for the first time back in, I think, 2016, 2017, maybe even 2018, I can't remember. It's been a while. And it didn't register with me the first time. I just read it and go, oh yeah, okay. Until I had my own problems a year or two later. So I figured I'd give it a reread just to see if I could register it now that I'm older and with a different perspective of the illness itself. And it hit me quite hard. I found it to be a very resonant read. It's a very quick read, thankfully. Although a part of me wishes it was a little bit longer just so he can go into much more detail about what was going on. But the thing I liked about it most was that he provided through his own experience and through the writings that there is a silver lining, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It is something you can recover from. Obviously, a lot of people don't, but he has proven through his own experiences that it can be fought through. And I find that quite an amazing piece of writing. I think it's his most well-known book. It might not be his best book. A lot of people talk about the Sophie's Choice or the Confessions of Nat Turner as being up there as among his best. I've only ever read one book by him, and it is Darkness Visible, but I hope to get to his other stuff in the future. So the honorable mention is All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I've sort of come to a bit of a conclusion that when it comes to rereadings of Cormac McCarthy, which I've done quite a few last year, I think I did No Country for Old Men, The Road, and yeah, All the Pretty Horses. And I think there's another one thrown in there somewhere. I've decided to exclude them from the list because then they are not my first time reading it there. So it's more of a retrospective reading, and I don't consider that to be fair for any other books that I read for the first time in the previous year, 2023, they're just gone. But I did. All the Pretty Horses was one that I appreciated when I first read it, but I didn't like it as much, and I love it now. I can see things. I can see through the lines. I can see through the writings. I can register the thematics more appropriately now that I'm older. I read most of Cormac's books when I was in my early 20s, and I didn't think I was the right type of reader back then to even comprehend what was going on in that book half the time. But I have now. And I'm glad I did. All the rereadings I've done McCarthy have all improved in estimation since I read it, and All Pretty Horses out of the 3 was the one that basically I appreciated more than the first time I read it compared to the other 2. I did like The Road, and I do love No Country for Old Men, but All the Pretty Horses was the one where I sort of sat back after finishing going, oh wow, okay, I was wrong. There's brilliance here. So it's an honorable mention for me purely because it is a reread and it's just not fair for the other books that I've only read the first time around. So now we're going to the top 5. And coming in number 5, it's actually a tie. So technically this is the top 6 books. But the 2 books that come in a tie for number 5 are Tender is Woman in the Dunes, a Japanese novel. It was during a period back probably this time last year where I read sort of 3 Japanese books. one of the books I actually didn't do a review on. I just didn't feel that I had read it in a way that required a video. I didn't feel like I got everything out of it that I should have. So I want to do another rereading, and I want to gather as much information and research a lot about the book before I even consider doing a video on it. Otherwise, the video would just be a pure surface level interpretation, which might piss off a lot of the fans out there of that book. The author of that book was Yukio Mishima, and he is a highly revered Japanese author, probably considered one of the best Japanese authors of all time in some circles. But this one here, The Woman in the Dunes, I actually found out about it through the movie first. It's a very, very psychedelic type of movie. I've never watched anything quite like it. And the only way I could watch it was actually on YouTube through the Criterion channel, I believe. Or the channel was Criterion, but I don't know whether it was an official thing. But the movie really threw me for a loop. And I was like, what the hell is this? So I read the book, and it's such a bizarre, weird reading experience. I've never read anything quite like it. Probably will never read anything like it again, but it stuck with me. It's been a year now since I read it, and it's one of those few books that might be one of the top 10 that just drills itself into my head and refuses to leave. The only other books I can think of that do that to me, well, Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, which I read many, many years ago, but that's still the book that drills itself into my head and refuses to leave. I think Woman in the Dunes will be one of those books. Kobe Abbey, or I don't know how you pronounce his name. Very fascinating read. I don't know if it's a great book or not, but it stunned me, to say the least. So I'll include it on the list as a dual number 5 spot. And then the other number 5 spot is The Crossing, Cormac McCarthy. Now, I've excluded all the rereadings, but The Crossing, this is the first time I've actually made all the way through. I've only ever read the novella and portions of the second half of the book. I did a part 1 review based on the Wolf novella section of the book, which I think is absolutely fantastic, maybe amongst the best writing Cormac's ever done. I went to do a part 2 book review, but the first time I recorded it, the volume wasn't working, and the second time I recorded it, my software crashed. So I just got really pissed off and just put it off. So I'm going to have to record it again. Unfortunately, because it's been about a month since I read the second section of The Crossing, I'm going to have to reread certain sections just to remind me. But I can say this, is that there's certain parts, including when he meets this priest in a derelict church, and in particular the ending of the book, which has this very apocalyptic feel to it, a very devastating ending. It threw me for a loop. The Crossing is in my top 4 favorite Cormac McCarthy books of all time now. It's truly, truly something. It's the total antithesis to All the Pretty Horses, despite being the second in the trilogy. Although, having said that, you could read The Crossing and All the Pretty Horses in no particular order, because, you know, they're in no way at all connected. The only way they're connected is that the main character from both books are in the third book, Cities of the Plain, which I have to get to this year. Fantastic book. I really love The Crossing. It is a bit overwritten at times, and there were sections of dialogue that was completely untranslated that I just couldn't be bothered at translating, so I just had to sort of go with my gut feeling as to what I thought they were talking about. But those are just minuscule things. The rest of it's insanely good, and purely emotional as well, which is something you don't really see in a McCarthy book. McCarthy, you generally have to push through the dialogue to get through to the emotion, but this one here, it wears its emotion mostly on its sleeve. You can feel it there. Beautiful book. Coming in at number 4 is Tender is the Flesh. Forgive me if I pronounced the name wrong. Agustina Bazterrica from South America. An international author. What I found with this list here is that it's a bit more international compared to my previous years, where I've gone mostly just American. I've tried to push my boundaries a little bit. Tender is the Flesh shocked the hell out of me. It's absolutely in the best way possible, it's a disgusting book, you know, about a society that basically farms humans to consume. And there's this one section in particular towards the beginning there where he goes on a tour through a human farming factory and processing factory that's among the most disturbing things I've ever read in a novel in my life. It builds to a conclusion in the second half, which really threw me for a loop. I'm still processing it all these months later. But I highly recommend it, and it's one of those, you know, TikTok made me read it things, and I'm not particularly fond of the whole TikTok made me read it thing, because I generally think that the books they recommend on those things are a bit minor in comparison to what I normally read, but I followed them on this one, and I'm glad I did. It's a great book. Coming in at number 4 is Bear, a controversial Canadian novel by Marian Engel. Most people know this book as the one where a isolated, slightly mentally ill woman fucks a bear, but it's more than that. There's something going on there. This to me was the very definition of a character study. She was a very fascinating character. In fact, out of all the books I've read this year, she might be the number one character from a book that I've read. And I really love reading about this book, because a lot of people tend to actually hate it. They don't like it as much as I did, but I found something there worth diving into. I think there's a lot of hidden things going on in this book. It's sort of like one of those ones where the book is like 140 pages, but it's got enough material there and hidden thematics that you could easily stretch out to 400 pages. There's a certain pages, certain sections where I'm reading it going, is this actually real, or is this in her mind? And the fact that she's isolated, going through all these papers on on an island basically, and there's a pet bear that just is chained up outside. I read this at midnight mid last year. Finished it around 4 a.m. and I was just like standing outside, you know, just like looking at the stars, just interpreting it. And if a book can make me do that, then it deserves all the attention it can possibly get. It appears I'm one of the few people that like this book, but hopefully you do too if you have read it, or if you don't like it, I'd be curious as to know why. Let me know below. But as it stands, it is the number 3 book of the year. Number 2 is one of only 2 5-star reviews I gave last year. It's Silence by Shusaku Endo. Absolutely devastated me. This is a fantastic piece of, I guess you can call it historical fiction. There is elements of truth in there about the Jesuit priests who were persecuted along with the Japanese who switched to that religion in Japan during that time period many centuries ago. And all told mostly through the writings of diary entries by this one priest who goes there along with his friend, mostly to find out what happened to basically their mentor, who vanished and had apparently apostatized. And there's all these talks about the torture techniques that go on there, but there's also talks about love as well, and about the Japanese way of life. It's not a preachy novel in any way or form. It just tells it how it is, and I find the ending to be completely not just devastating, but also speaks to us as a people, as a form of humanity. There is goodness in this book. It's just that in this time period, that's just what happened. You know, that's just the way things were. Various cultures, not just in Japan, but all around the world, you know, they've always stuck to their own principles and their own belief systems and their own way of life and a way of culture. So there is an element with this book about the whole idea of colonization, colonization through religion, I guess. And a whole discussion will be made of that, but this is purely just through the eyes of one priest, Jesuit priest, and his experiences in Japan. And if you read it through those eyes, you will come out on the other side a more thoughtful person, I believe, from reading this book. It's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's shocking, but above all, it is a 5-star read for me. I'm glad I read it. Two Japanese books have made my top 5 2023. I should probably read more Japanese novels. But coming in at number 1 is, and those of you who have seen the video will know which one it is Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. A very short novella. It was shortlisted for the Pulitzer Prize back in 2012, but for some stupid reason the prize wasn't even awarded that year. I think he was up against Dale Foster Wallace for The Pale King and someone else as well. Train Dreams should have won. It's a wonderful, heartbreaking, illuminating piece of American fiction. It's like an American history of this time period distilled into such a short book. There's so much happening. A wonderful character study of this man who's been through all these events. But the thing that puts this book above all the others, that rises like a phoenix, is, I can't remember if it's chapter 7 or chapter 8, but there's a chapter involving a wolf. And he's interacting with this wolf. And it's the best piece of writing I think I've read this year, or 2023 year. That chapter is the best chapter I read of that year. And even if you were to take that chapter away from the book will probably still be number 1 for me. it got me. It is a wonderful, wonderful piece of work. It makes me want to go out and read all of Dennis Johnson's other books. And more importantly, it reminded me that there are books written this century, or even this decade, or even in the last 5 years. It reminds me of that there are books written in today's time that can still pack a punch and be considered somewhat of a future classic. This is one of them. I read Train Dreams, and even though I knew it was published 10 years ago, it felt as though it was written 50 years ago. That's astonishing. He's a brilliant writer. He really is. I'm stunned. I really, really am. When I finished it, all I wanted to do was spend the next month just rereading and rereading and rereading, getting everything I can, just plucking every bit of juice out of all the sentences, out of all the lines. I'm glad I read it. A lot of people have recommended it to me. Thank you so much for recommending it to me. I'm all the more grateful. This has been a truly mind-altering year for books for me. As I said before, I've always generally 90% of the time focused on American fiction, but I've pushed the boundaries a little bit. I've got a book from Canada, I've got a book from South America, I've got 2 books from Japan, and I hope to push it even further. To be honest with you, I think I've only ever read 1 book that was written in Australia. I probably have to rectify that a little bit, I guess. I also need to get back into actually trying to finish a Russian novel for once, a bit more European novels, and yeah, just maybe another book from Mexico. The world is my oyster. This has been a wonderful, wonderful 2023 for international reading for me, and has made me realize that America isn't the sole keeper of great fiction. I really hope you like the books that I've read, and that you achieve all you can this year with regards to reading. I'm really hoping this will be a more fruitful year for me. I'm not a fast reader. I tend to basically read a book and then spend days afterwards sort of researching and just piecing together all the missing elements that I didn't get out of books. That's why I can only read like 20 to 30 books a year instead of the usual 50 to 100 that everyone seems to be able to do, which absolutely baffles me, but I'm getting there. Thank you so much for watching this, and all the best. Have a great 2024. See ya.